Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. My name is Phil Liu, and I'm with ExpoSoft. This is a one-hour webinar on improving user experience, particularly for the mobile platform, and it is a precursor for what's going to be done at the conference. I'm going to be giving a one-day tutorial at the conference on June 2nd. And as you know, you've probably gotten emails that March 31st is the deadline for the early bird pricing. So register if you can. There's some stuff on, copyright stuff that's mandatory for us to have here. And let's get going. Here's just kind of a brief non-LinkedIn version of who I am and why I'm really excited about user experience for the mobile platform. You know, when I first started working, I worked at a factory, and at the factory, I learned that being able to do lots of different things was a good thing in order to move around to different tasks in the factory that needed to get done. And then I moved on and I upgraded and I decided I wanted to work at a gas station. And at the gas station, you might think that you don't learn a lot, but what I learned a lot there was about customer satisfaction. And what I noticed was that this is back when they had full service, and I would go to the driver and I'd say, would you like to have your windshield washed and your oil checked? And if they did say that they wanted that service, I would do that, but not only would I wash the front windshield, but I would also wash the back and the sides. And what I found was that when I did that, I was able to exceed their expectations, because they certainly didn't expect that. And a lot of times they might give me a quarter or 50 cents or something like that. So when you're making $2 an hour, 50 cents isn't bad. But that was my first lessons in exceeding customer expectations. Then I went to McDonald's and I worked there, and I started working in the bathrooms, and eventually I was able to move up to making breakfast. I made the pancakes in the morning, and what I learned at McDonald's was a lot about process and the placement of things and making processes efficient. And really that's a lot very much related to designing applications, because we want the users to go through the application with a minimal amount of effort. And so McDonald's was my first entry into that. And then I went to work as a salesperson at a shopping mall at one of those kiosks, and we sold dried fruits and nuts. And what I learned there was the placement of things was very, very important in terms of attracting and getting, you could say, end users to come into our application or our kiosk. And so we always wanted to have things like banana chips, you could say, close to where they could see them, because it seemed like banana chips and cashews were something that seemed to draw people in. And so when we design our mobile applications and work on the user experience of our mobile applications, we have to think of those kinds of things that are cashews and banana chips for our application and for our user. So, I put this question here because I really believe that mobile user experience and usability will clearly differentiate our applications in the future. And it's not just okay or enough to have an application anymore or to have a website anymore. We really have to differentiate and move beyond just having something and really be the best that we can be. And so that's what this webinar is about, as well as my tutorial. The difference in the tutorial and the webinar is that there's a lot more exercises and so forth. This is the LinkedIn version of me. We don't need to go through that very much, but I will go into this here. And this is what the mobile landscape used to be like, with nobody there. There used to be, then there would be a few people that would have a mobile website or a mobile app back in 2007 when the iPhone was first released. People were just starting to get on the App Store, and that business model was creating some stir in the environment in terms of people being able to release their apps. And then we finally get to here we are today, and you can see that's me. It's tough competing out there, not only on a bicycle, but with our mobile apps. You've got people all around us that look like us and do what we do, and we have to find that edge. And I really believe that edge in helping us to win is the mobile user experience. So here's what we're going to cover today, and I highlighted this in blue in the blue letters because we're not going to have any hands-on exercises here because that's for the tutorial. As far as Q&A goes, feel free to type your questions in the question panel. If we have time during the webinar, we'll get to them, or we can handle them at the end. I'm just going to have to manage the timing. And then if we don't answer the questions, then we will put them on our blog. So let's get going here. So first of all, we're going to talk about usability and UX and the differences between them and why they're important. And then really dive into usability, UX design, and some of the factors and concepts that we need to take into account when not only designing our applications, but taking a look at them and evaluating them for improvement. I'm not going to read the slides. Slides are for you as a takeaway. The webinar is recorded, so we will be posting the recording. I'm not going to ask you any questions because this isn't a tutorial, but rather the webinar, so it's a one-way dialogue. You can ask questions, of course, through the question panel. Okay, so here we go. This is a little bit old data, but the difference, the main thing that I wanted you to see here was that in contrast to web applications where you have stuff on the web, a lot of the revenue for web apps is subscription-based now, but a lot of it is on the web. The revenue is based on advertising. And this is different in the mobile environment where the majority of the revenue is generated through the applications themselves. And I did a little research and found that this trend is continuing, where we've got now 35 billion forecasted for this year in terms of revenue generated from mobile apps themselves rather than the advertising. So this really says that if we want to get ahead in the game and be in the front, we really have to pay attention to the app itself and the quality of the app. As I said earlier, expectations is really a key factor in making a user happy, making them satisfied, and generating a good UX. And there's a lot of things that have gone into changing expectations over the last 5 years. There's some factors here. We have different types of economic models coming out, and as well as social. Mobile and cloud have really brought everything into people's hands away from their desktop. So these kinds of things have changed what we expect from an application and therefore changed our user experience. User experience is really one of the big factors in determining the experience is context. And context is dependent on what you're doing at the time. So you can see, I put this here because I'm wondering how children who are learning how to use iPhones and iPads today, how their expectations from applications will be different than what we expect. So, mobile now is not just about mobile. This is my hand here. I've got a Jawbone, as you see, as well as a Misfit Shine. I've also got a couple other devices. But, the mobile world is really growing. And you can see these devices here. They don't act in isolation. They all have a mobile app that goes with them. So this is really critical that, you hear about the Internet of Things and wearables and so forth. Everything is going to be going through the mobile phone as, you could say, a hub or collector of information. I mentioned context before, so context is really key with mobile tasks. And so when you think about it, context consists of a couple things, well, many things actually. It involves what you're doing, where you are. You may be talking to someone. The time of day as well as the day of week is also important for the context of the user. And that is the primary difference between mobile apps and desktop apps, is that you add so much contextual elements, so many contextual elements to the user profile, and it really affects their experience of the application. One of the ones that is really new lately, since Facebook and Twitter and so forth, is the social aspect of applications, and in particular mobile applications, because you're out there out and about. And so my question to you, give you some food for thought, is to think about why is it that we as human beings want to share these things, and what kind of satisfaction do we derive from this, and does this have an impact, or should it have an influence on the way that you design and think of and test your own applications? See, we've got quite a few people joining here. Sorry we can't go back, but here we go. So as I was saying before, so the mobile phone is really going to serve as a funnel of sorts for contextual information to come into our application. And so we've got sensors. The fuel sensor was just a real simple one, but you can think of how many different sensors we have out there that are going to be feeding data into our mobile apps, or could feed data into our mobile apps. And think about how you can incorporate sensory data into your apps to add value to your user. Here is, for instance, just some contextual information. Here's an application that called Bedit, that you put the phone on your bed, and while you're sleeping, it senses things. So sometimes you may not want to have it be sensing things, but other times you may want to really know how well you're sleeping and so forth. Here's a list of contextual sensors that are in mobile phones now. And it's just amazing that these things are collecting so much information that we don't even know about. Sometimes it could be scary, actually. And the thing about, and that's where, that's really what is generating all this big data, is the sensors that are out there collecting information. Sensors in cars, sensors on our bodies, everywhere. And the thing is, how are you going to use this data in your application to improve it, to really provide the context that the user wants to have, and to improve their experience of the app? So, some of the things that are important when we go about testing and evaluating the data, of course, would be the timeliness of the data, reliability, and as well as its accuracy. Yeah, so here's a big question for us testers out there is, obviously we can't test everything, so we need to think about how we're going to be testing this data coming in, and what kind of test strategies are we going to use. It's just not the simple ETL problem that we've had in the past, but we really have to look at the data itself and whether or not it makes any sense. The thing about context is that it enables what we call anticipation and anticipatory services and products. And it's not about just selling stuff. So normally when we think of companies collecting data on us, like Facebook, we think that they're just trying to sell us stuff. And that's true. We see ads that are kind of creepy. Gee, I just looked at this website and they knew everything, and then now they're presenting me with a pair of socks that is very similar to what I looked at. That's not really it, but it's really about providing better services and better customized products related to the context that we're currently in, and doing that without destroying trust that our privacy is being breached. And that's the important factor there, is trust. So let's go over some context tasks suited for mobile. Tasks suited for mobile include deadline-oriented tasks. Suppose you need to you're on the road and you forgot your sister's birthday, and so it's very time-oriented. You really got to get her something, and her birthday is 2 days from now. Other things include rapidly changing information, like weather, or perhaps you have a task that is very private, and you don't want to be doing that in your office or something like that, but it does have to get done. And that's why there's a lot of mobile banking apps. Nobody wants to be doing paying their bills at work on their work computer, so you may go out outside and have a little break or a smoke break and pay a bill or two on your mobile phone. Things that are not suited for mobile apps, and that mostly includes things that have long task times, things that are difficult to do, things that require a lot of information or comparison of information, not suited well for mobile at all. So, and this really gets back to the context of our user base that's out there doing stuff. You know, when you're out using your mobile phone on a mobile platform, whether it be a tablet or a smartphone, you're probably not going to be wanting to do any long tasks or tasks where you need to absorb too much information. And so I bring up this stuff about tasks because tasks is really important in terms of prioritizing. You can see that, for instance, this Walgreens application on the left, they've got the pharmacy in the upper left hand corner. And so this tells me that they must generate a lot of money in their pharmacy. On the other side of the coin, you've got Costco here. And what's interesting to me about this is that the top menu item is warehouse offers, online offers. And then the third item there is the shopping at Costco. So they really want to prioritize the warehouse offers. They think that you're going to be in the warehouse and looking at stuff and wanting to get deals on the spot. And so now let's talk about how all this stuff goes into the user experience and design and effect and so forth. So we start with usability design, and based on the design of things, we get an effect. And the effect is things like how fast the user can do something, how many mistakes they make, and how many times they're able to complete what they're doing versus not complete. And all of this goes into the user experience. User experience is based on the effect of usability, but also many other psychological things, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. So basically we want to design, we want to do our design, and then we want to test and evaluate, and of course release, and then do another evaluation. And the thing that makes the design tough and thinking about is that we really have to think about three big things in the mobile environment. One of them is distractions, context, and the screen size. And so you can think of, here's an old phone here. Think about how hard it was to design apps back in those days with such limited real estate. One factor of usability design that I like to think about a lot is the learnability of an application. If you've downloaded an app onto your smartphone and you cannot figure it out very quickly, sometimes 15 seconds, sometimes 30, you're probably going to just forget about it and say, well, I think I'll find another app that's easier to use. So think about that from your own context of when you have done this, and then also think about your users that are using your business application, and is it easy for them to learn how to use, not only initially but on an ongoing basis, and customizing it and making it suited to their particular information and profile. Many things here that you could think about. We won't go into them here, but we will cover them in the tutorial coming up. Here's some stuff, actually a definition from ISO on usability, the effective usability. You can see three big things here. First of all, highlighted in red, users, goals, and context of use. So it's for specified users and specified goals and a specified context of use. So you think about when you're designing an application or evaluating an application for instance, a person in a warehouse taking inventory. It may be dark in the warehouse. Most of the guys or people taking inventory in a huge warehouse, maybe they're men. Maybe they've got big fingers. Maybe they don't see very well because it's kind of dark. Maybe they're older people. You really have to think about the actual user that's out there and what they're doing. And that's why these things are important in terms of generating the effectiveness and the satisfaction of those users. Here's some things in terms of the context and specified. I went over some of them in the example of the warehouse, but think about your users, who they are, what they're doing, and what environment they're in when you're designing your app. Yeah, so we have specified users, goals, context, things like that. Think about your users and what they're actually doing before you go into designing and evaluating the app. So you may have an app that looks really good and may have a good wow factor, but it's just really hard to get things done. And so think about that when you're evaluating the app. So we want to design the app, and I've mentioned this before, design and test for the task. So here's some examples of some tasks. I won't go into these in detail, but the main thing is really think about the small number of tasks, the top tasks that your users have to do, and make those easy for them. Lastly, we get into the user experience part. And the user experience is really satisfaction and how happy they are in using the application. And happiness, you could say, is a nebulous thing that's difficult to measure, as is satisfaction. But there are some things that we know that we can do to increase that if we cannot measure it. One of the things is generating trust in the users. And I'm a big proponent of trust because I really believe that that is going to separate companies and their apps in the next decade. The other factor that leads to satisfaction is convenience and anticipation. So I'm going to go over some of these things coming up here. So we got user experience and trust, and I really believe that trust is about relationship, and your application is a big part in generating trust in your users. Think about, your application is now considered your storefront, and think about different stores that you walk in and the level of trust that you get from the way things are arranged, the way that people approach you in the store. Do they sit back and ignore you, or do they go out and say hello, a short hello? Are they high pressure? Those kind of things are what's going to separate your application. Transforming those physical and personal things from the storefront into your application is what's going to separate it. Here's one example here, and you can see that with the Kaiser Permanente and the Fidelity application here. And Kaiser, they put my whole username there, and I just hate that. I do not want to have my whole username there, because somebody picks up my phone and somehow finds out my code to the phone, and then they have my whole username there. Maybe they can guess my password. I hope not. On the other hand, you can see that the username is partially masked on the Fidelity application. Another way of generating trust is wording. So you want to have wording like a real human being rather than lawyer talk. And so this, to me, helps to generate trust too, because they just want me to quickly understand. You're not trying to fill me up with a bunch of lawyer talk. Here's another way to generate trust is asking for permission. That's really important. You don't want to give users the creeps from them finding out that you're watching them without asking for permission. Acknowledgement: when you make a mistake, say I made a mistake or something's wrong and please wait, rather than just having some error icon or a timing thing that shows, oh, please wait. Here's another example about thinking about satisfaction. People feel satisfied and happy when you listen to them. So you can see that they're asking for information. They want you to participate, and a lot of users feel good that the person that they're dealing with, the company that they're dealing with, cares about what they think. In terms of creating satisfaction, I think one of the biggest things that creates satisfaction is anticipating. So when I go to a restaurant and I order a beer and the waiter brings me a beer, I want them to bring me a glass and bring me a napkin, and I don't want to have to ask. I want them to think about what I want. And so, you know, this is a big part of creating satisfaction. And not only that, think about, if you think about in your mind, you're thinking, okay, you know, I just got this omelet here. I think I need some salt and pepper. And you're just getting ready to turn around and ask the waiter for salt and pepper, and they're walking over and bringing it to you. What kind of satisfaction does that create? That makes you think, gee, this guy's really on the ball. He's thinking about me. So we want to create applications like that, and I brought this up. I put this image up here because we don't want the anticipation to be slow. We want it to be fast, and that's why we have these kind of jars now instead of these jars. So anticipation, but no nagging. So we don't want to nag. I won't go through this here. And anticipation leads to satisfaction, and I brought that up in my previous example. I think it's really, really important to anticipate. So now let's talk a little bit about usability, what we've learned so far. What we've learned so far is a little bit about usability, something about user experience. We've learned some design considerations. And next I'm going to talk about some special considerations for mobile devices. I see there's no questions raised so far. I guess that everybody understands. I guess I'm doing a good job, so let's keep going. So, like I said before, just having a mobile app or website is not enough now. Some of the things that matter for users, and we've gone over some of the things, including the user interface. I went over the learnability of the interface, making sure that things are easy to learn. I did not mention performance, but that's really important as well. And then the accessibility of various functions, key functions, right? I went over the importance of thinking about the tasks that are at hand that are the most important for users. And so we really need to think about these things when we're developing, designing the app, as well as evaluating the app. And mobile apps should perform better on that particular device than they would on a desktop device. So if you look at here, here's an example from Excel Sports, and this little blue thing in the middle here, this is really for just what we just talked about. It's for the learnability of the app. So they want to help the user there and help them to learn how to use the app. Because if they get confused, like I said before, if you get confused and not getting the full value out of the app, you're going to leave. Here's another one, and you can see that the little circles on the bottom here are helping the user understand and learn the app. And this has kind of become the de facto standard to have these status circles to show where the user is, all affecting the usability and the learnability of the app itself. Here's another de facto standard that has come into being for the integration of mobile web versus native applications, in terms of having an open button for and displaying whether or not the application has been installed. Here's an example of integration, and I found this really, really intriguing and actually exciting, that Uber had developed a partnership with United, and so they're actually in the United app. And in a way, Uber is kind of becoming like AT&T back in 1983, 82, where they were just monopolizing everything. Sidekick and Lyft and all these other ones, I just don't think they stand a chance. It's too bad. So design issues, design affects the way the user gets things done, and then we have the experience itself. So all of these things that I've kind of breezed over very quickly go into our evaluation and testing criteria. So if we say that, we talked about learnability, what are some specific criteria that you would use to evaluate an app or test an app? And we're going to go over some of these things now. So here are some typical evaluation and testing criteria. Typing is important, sorting and filtering, searching, navigation, as you know, is very important. The way an app handles errors, as well as the visibility in using the app, are all very important things. This is just a partial list. I'm going to go over a couple of these. So let's move on here. Okay. So, as part of the workshop, we're not going to do this here, of course, but when you think about typing, what kinds of things do you think are really important, or concepts do you think are really important when it comes to typing, and how that affects the usability and user experience of a mobile app? Well, obviously, typing is really a pain. And so we want to think about, when it comes to typing, you want to think about registration, you want to think about usernames, passwords, and how that can possibly integrate with your desktop apps or your web apps to reduce the cost of typing for your users out there in the field using their mobile applications or mobile devices. And I say reduce the cost of typing because time is money. So whenever you're, typing stuff in and the user could make mistakes or take a long time to type things in, that's a big cost. And we want to try to minimize that. Some things that you may think about in terms of reducing the cost of typing, making the application mistake tolerant, so correcting things for them, or perhaps providing defaults, also allowing for the easy deletion of defaults. One thing I hate is when you have to put the cursor and actually press the delete key to delete things. That's really a pain. The other thing is to help the user by having computed values. So computed values meaning things that are based on entries that they've already made. And what other things can you think about that would make typing or reduce the cost of typing for your users? Some of the other things include widget entry. This is actually part of reducing the cost of typing, but giving users the ability to enter things in different ways with buttons and boxes and so forth, as long as these things are, I guess you could say, big thumb friendly. This can really help the user. So here's an example here. This is actually an example of a couple things. This is the United app, and you can see I do a little bit of flying. But what I wanted you to see here was that if you look at their website, there's all kinds of things. But here, they have a very small number of tasks that they've put here on the mobile app. And then they actually have more there for infrequent tasks. So they've thought this through and thought about the most frequent things that you're going to be wanting to do out in the field. And so book a flight, checking in, flight status, map of the airport, perhaps looking at your account are the top things. Book a flight, the most prioritized tasks. I think really they just want you to book flights, but that really when you're out on the field doing stuff, I think probably checking in or flight status would be more important than booking a flight, but that's just me personally. The other thing to notice here is that the consistency of the button size and the distance between the buttons is always the same. So they're making this they're making that consistent so that you can get used to using the app and not make mistakes. And then they have an equal distance between those particular buttons. Here's an example of listing and scrolling, and so we want to scroll down on lists on a mobile app rather than going across. Here's an example of using a carousel to help users, giving them alternative methods of input. I won't go over specific criteria for widgets and so forth because we're going to save that for the workshop. Searching is really important. You know, the thing about searching that we have to think about is that searching takes up space, and then also it distracts from other tasks that you may want users to get done. So that's an important thing to think about when you're having a search function. When you do have a search function and you have errors, you certainly want to incorporate error handling to make it easy for the user to understand. This is a really pet peeve for me. You can see here that I typed in auto SSK when it was supposed to be Autodesk DSK, and they didn't come back with anything for me. It just says symbol not found. So think about the errors that your users are going to be encountering and how you can help them rather than come back and just have some error message. So, you know, when you're doing these different types of, I hope you can see the headings there. I forgot to change this. When you're doing these different types of design issues and evaluating an app, what you want to do is you want to have these attributes on the left and where they apply in the app and actually do an evaluation. And so you have the criteria that we just kind of talked about already, how they handle results, errors, auto-completion, search box length, these kind of criteria that you have, and use these to evaluate your application in order to improve it. The next thing is navigation. Navigation, as you know, is key. You want to, everybody's heard of reducing friction, and so, you know, we can use some of the same principles from e-commerce to enable users to step through our applications very easily and be able to use them. Here is just a real brief, shows Yelp, and this is an example of that you don't have to have fancy colors and fancy images to have a successful application. And so you think about the goals that a user has when they're using Yelp and the context that they're in. Usually they're out and they're trying to find a restaurant or something like that, so they have nearby as their in the upper left as one of their primary tasks. And another thing to notice here is that we've got this bar at the bottom, and this has kind of become the de facto standard for as a main menu or functions that you want to have stable, just like the File Edit menu on Word or on Microsoft applications or on Windows applications on the upper bar. You also want to have consistency here, and this has become a de facto standard. So even though you may have a cool design for an app, this gets back to what users expect and their expectations. This has become the expectation, so you might want to think about how you can kind of implement this bar for your app. We want to minimize clicks and compress steps. So again, the things in e-commerce we can borrow in terms of combining tasks or combining steps within tasks to make things easier for them. And this gets back to what I was talking about earlier, which is really thinking about the tasks that users are going to do with your app on the mobile platform in the field. Think very carefully about, just basically use the 80-20 rule in terms of what 20% top tasks are they going to use 80% of the time. Swiping is something that that's unique on a mobile platform, and like I said before, you want to think about showing a user when they can swipe. And the Walmart application here, you can see the dots shows that, and that has also become, as I mentioned earlier, the de facto standard in showing users how they can swipe, and it significantly increases the usability and learnability of the app. This one here is swiping down to get the menu. That's very interesting. Display and visibility is really important. So you can see that the MarketWatch application, this graph is just about useless because you can't even see what it is. Think about what is useful for the user and if it has any meaning. So for me, this particular graph has no meaning. It's too hard to see. So I don't even see why they even bother. On the other side, you look at the Walmart there, and look at what I find interesting is they have the package of the collard greens showing, but they have nothing for asparagus. And so think about your own app and where it would be applicable to have images and where not. Obviously, they think that cut and clean collard greens, that must be a good brand or something that they think users like. On the other hand, or maybe they just didn't have time to put an image for market-side asparagus. Just some really quick examples here. We don't have too much time. I think we have a few more minutes. Here's a use of carousels. This has really good navigation and some good-sized buttons for big thumbs, big fingers. There is a lack of priority in the buttons. Shows better the lack of priority. Sharing and Buy Me has the same priority. It is good to show where the user is. You can see that they have one in their shopping basket. So that's really critical. One thing I'd like to point out here is that you can see that they use the term shopping basket. Actually, I've used it here, shopping basket, but in the USA, we call it shopping cart. But in the UK, you can see this is a UK app, they use the shopping basket term. Here's another example of they think Bloomberg has designed this application with white on black. And the reason for that is they think that this really increases the visibility for heavy text type applications, which is what theirs is. So if yours is a heavy text application, think about contrast. So contrast is really important. Here's an example in Fidelity, which I think is really great. It shows a minimal amount of input that's needed. It shows it's very clear what they want you to do. They want you to place this order. So there's not a lot of garbage or distraction on this screen. And so when you design your apps or when you're evaluating the app, think about the primary task at hand, what you want the user to accomplish, and if there's any potential distractions. You can also see at the bottom, again, they have that consistent bar, and consistent icons, which increases the learnability of the app. So that's very important as well. Again, here's the bar at the bottom, and they have fairly meaningful icons. They don't feel the need to have fancy images, which could slow the application down in terms of speed. And this is an instance where, in my own opinion, my opinion, boring is okay, because I'd rather have boring and working well than looking fancy and not working too well. So this app would score well on ease of use and understandability. So, as testers, we need to think about, everybody, we keep talking about shifting left, and that's what we need to do. Understanding the way things are designed or should be designed, and how we can evaluate those and test those from an end user point of view, thinking about the tasks that users really have at hand and what they're doing is really critical to the way that we evaluate and test mobile apps, and where I really believe that we can add a lot of value, because I think that, at least in old school, a lot of people that designed web apps or design applications don't really think through what the users are going to do and how to test it from our point of view. So in closing, I think that's really important to think about the task at hand. That's really, really important. So I just put this here again because I think this is a great example to show what Fidelity has done here to really drive home that task analysis is really critical. So think about what you're trying to mobilize on your app. I've worked with a lot of clients, and one of the first things they do is we want to have all the stuff on the mobile app, and shoot, you definitely don't want to do that. And lastly, think about how you can improve the workflow to make users be able to complete the task as efficiently as possible. So here's some summary points. You can see the guy that's running with this baton. Think about the context of what activities they're going to be doing while they're using your app. Are they outside? Are they moving around? You can see this guy typing. He's in a laboratory, it looks like. So obviously a guy in the laboratory is in a totally different environment than the guy outside in the sun. Also think about visibility. See that pair of glasses there? Visibility not only in terms of contrast, but also in size of buttons. And also think about the age of people. We have a general aging of our population. And, my dad, he can't see things too well. And also his fingers move a lot slower and are a lot less dexterous than they used to be. So think about your user group and what kind of what their ages are and so forth. Are we at our desk or are we outside? And think clearly about the contrast of things. And lastly, you see here, think about the order of things in terms of when you're prioritizing your tasks. Here's a short conclusion about usability, and we want to be thumb-friendly, intuitive, simple, as well as really taking into account thinking about our users with very, very short attention spans, and they're going to be distracted very easily. As far as UX goes, think about the expectations that your users have and how you can create that optimal user experience and satisfaction through listening, developing trust, and also anticipating what your users want. And lastly, we don't want to mobilize everything. So think about the 80-20 rule and the things that you really want to mobilize. And I really think that the key to developing a 5-star application, and we can change it from a roulette wheel to something that we can really do something about. I think I've given you a few things for your toolkit to be able to evaluate and improve your mobile app. I hope that you've learned a lot today. Here's how you can contact me. Of course, this is a closing for something else, a seminar, so there'll be no evaluation form in the back. But anyways, this is how you can contact me, and I hope to see you at the conference. I'll be doing a tutorial, one-day tutorial on UX, and also I'll be doing the one of the keynotes in the afternoon. So look forward to seeing you at the conference. And also, if you want to submit questions, you can feel free to write me here, and I will place the questions along with the answers on our blog. So thanks very much, and have a good afternoon or a good day. Bye-bye.